When we check the price of groceries or pay a utility bill, the cause feels local, but the actual anchor for global prices is a quiet stretch of deep blue ocean water halfway across the world. This is the Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide, forming a bottleneck between the Arabian Peninsula and Iran. The navigational reality is tighter. Megatankers require specific depths, confining them to lanes only a few miles wide, pinned against a volatile coastline. This narrow passage functions as the center of gravity for global energy, where the world's most vital supply chains are dictated by the shape of the land. The numbers are staggering. Every day, 20 million barrels of crude oil pass through here, 20% of the global supply. And it isn't just oil. Over 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas is forced through this same gap. Most of this energy flows east. The manufacturing sectors of China, India, and Japan rely on these shipments to maintain their industrial output. Severing this connection wouldn't just slow down trade, it would effectively starve the world's largest manufacturing hubs of their primary fuel source. If the world is this dependent on one narrow gate, it raises a question: why haven't we simply built a way around it? Nations have tried. Saudi Arabia and the UAE invested billions in overland pipelines connecting to the Red Sea and Arabian Sea, but pipeline capacity is dwarfed by maritime tankers. They can only handle a small fraction of the 20 million barrels moving by sea daily. This physical limit means that in an emergency, there is no way to reroute the majority of the world's energy shipments. These pipelines are a partial safeguard, but the global market remains structurally tied to the water. The military threat is asymmetrical. As seen with these Iranian speedboats, it's relatively inexpensive to threaten shipping using small craft, sea mines, and coastal missiles. Compare that to the multi-billion-dollar cost of a U.S. aircraft carrier. Protecting these lanes requires a massive, ongoing financial and logistical commitment from Western navies. But there's a reason the trigger is rarely pulled. Iran's economy is almost entirely dependent on the oil exports passing through this very water. To stay solvent, Iran needs to sell its oil to its largest buyer, China, a trade that would vanish the moment the strait is closed. This creates a stalemate. To successfully starve their enemies of energy, Iran would have to bankrupt itself in the process. Researchers use crisis simulations, like those modeled for 2026, to stress test what happens if this diplomatic stalemate finally breaks. The physical shock is immediate. If the anchor drops on the strait, millions of barrels of crude and massive LNG cargoes are instantly removed from the global supply. The first economic reaction is invisible. War risk insurance premiums for ships would skyrocket, making even neutral shipping too expensive to operate. A local physical blockage quickly translates into a systemic paralysis of the entire global shipping network. In this scenario, market models show Brent crude oil prices surging past $126 a barrel. When the price of fuel jumps at the pump, it forces up the overhead for everything from container transport to fertilizer production, raising costs for consumers across the planet. Major Asian economies would face a structural supply deficit, likely leading to mandatory energy rationing for factories and homes. Grave. This is how a regional conflict becomes a global economic shutdown. No amount of strategic reserves or emergency production can replace a 20 million barrel per day hole in the market. As long as we rely on these fuels, the stability of the global economy remains balanced on a knife edge, contained within just 21 miles of water.